Good evening. Welcome to the April 1st, 2025 Select Board meeting. Call this meeting to order. First up, we have a 6 o'clock appointment with Ed Snow, Northfield Golf Club, seasonal permit conditions. Shelby, want to come up? Oh, you'll take it? Okay. Yeah. We had put some stipulations in there, not knowing what we were doing, but will you explain to us what?
Yeah, we got the approval for the event permit with the condition that there's no bass on line music. But we're here to hope to revisit that because the line music that we do have, essentially they have the bass guitars and the bass drums. So essentially, if we're going to have these bands for the community events that we host, it's not realistic to have no bass. So when we look at the event permit with any conditions for that, it won't be realistic for us to meet those conditions.
Did you get any complaints this last year?
Not that we're aware
None
of.
to you or your father or anybody? Okay, that's good. And I checked with the police and they said they had no complaints too. I checked with the police chief and he said it's been a couple of years since he had a complaint and that they, you'd address that. Anybody else have anything to?
I just have one comment. So I'm the one that asked to put that on there because I live in that neighborhood. And from a physics perspective, bass has a longer wavelength, and so it goes around things better, and higher frequency sound gets blocked more easily and breaks up more easily. So the bass not only travels further, it also is less impeded by the things that you put in place. Is there a way to mitigate, have them turn down the bass guitars or the bass drums? Is there a way to mitigate the bass? Because that's the thing that travels really far, and that's the concern.
I spoke with one of our local sound guys who does, he's a local musician, plus he works for sound for these bands. We do have the soundboard in place, and he said that will capture anything. So a lot of times the bass comes out the back of the speakers, and that would be towards the neighborhood. So we do put the boards behind them to help with the neighborhood noise. But he said essentially whether they're going through their own bass guitar amplifier or their PA system, there's really no way to fully get that out of.
Right.
There's no way to fully stop it. And he did say, bass is one of those 360 movements that, based on humidity or how much foliage is on the trees, like you can't totally control it. And the bass is less affected by those also. Like the higher frequencies, they're knocked out by water in the air and by things that block it. So that was my concern. And whether it's any like DJ or live music, we're very aware that we live in a neighborhood, and we have the conversation with all of our entertainment, whether if it's live music or a DJ. They're very aware that we want to mitigate as much as possible any disturbance to the town, to the neighborhood. So I think as much as they can have less space, I think they do a good job of kind of addressing that with us. But I don't think there's any way to fully disregard the bass with any live music events. That was our concern with the
right. And it makes sense. Thanks for explaining. You guys have done just such a good job in the last couple of years. Really, really big difference. So really appreciate that. That's very neighborly behavior. And thanks for coming in and explaining.
Yeah, we're not music people. We had no idea really. We just thought, oh yeah, okay.
That it's not separable.
And I apologize for my lack of musical knowledge. But
we appreciate you taking the time to reconsider.
well, you've been doing well because we haven't had any complaints. I mean, you're gonna have a little bit of noise here or there, maybe. Same as a barking dog. You can't always keep a dog quiet, so you're gonna have some noise. That's the nature of a small town. So I mean, but where you have done really well, and the police said they've got no calls. We've had no complaints, written complaints here. Dee?
Well, I just wanted to point out that many of the events that they do are for the benefit of the community, because you don't charge the senior center or the library or the rec com for the events that you've hosted at the beach house. So I just want to say thank you for that. I've always found that I could either call you or Ed if I had any concerns, which I did the first year, but I happened to run into Ed when he was out on his golf cart with his noise thing when I was walking a dog. So I just think you guys have made a lot of adjustments, and I'm also very proud of the work that you've done, because you started during COVID and you've become this successful Northfield business that attracts people and provides for the community. And I know your community events, like hopefully this year, I'm looking at Pam, hopefully this year, maybe the symphony will be outdoors, because that's one of the events that we're talking about. So, and if I remember correctly from, you're talking about basically 5 events, one of which is the orchestra. And another one is a jazz group that came through, if I remember correctly, the Cultural Council and the library grant. So that just basically leaves 3 nights between June and October or September for a live band. The rest is just graduation parties and weddings and life celebrations and things like that, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. I'm good.
Anybody have anything else?
Is the date is June to September or June to October?
September is the date of the last live music
Live.
night, but we do have a wedding in October.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I'll make a motion to,
Is that the original?
This is the one with,
Maybe you want to edit that one.
that,
If
okay,
you're going to change it, I just want to make sure you make the edits
has
for
the
her.
notes on it.
Yeah.
On the back.
Okay.
okay, I was editing this one that Sandra had.
Yeah, I think, is that a copy?
It's, yeah, that's a printed copy.
Okay,
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the Northfield Golf Club seasonal permit,
editing out, or
minus any conditions.
minus the conditions we added on 3/18/25.
We're rescinding
Rescinding
that
those.
statement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Want to give her that one back?
This
a
one?
minute.
Oh,
I'm just gonna initial.
They'll give you that one back, then you
I'm
have
just
it.
initialing the,
oh, good.
Yeah,
Did you put
I
a date
initialed
on
the
it?
thing,
yeah.
it just said rescind added conditions.
We can rescind it on our copy for the file. too.
Okay.
That way you have
Thank you.
a totally good copy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Okay, let's see here. We only have a couple minutes for the school board one. Let's do payroll warrants and vendor warrants real quick.
I move that we approve the April 2nd, 2025 payroll warrant of $81,497.89.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I move that we approve the April 2nd, 2025 vendor warrant of $1 million, $9,844.90. And this includes, timely enough, the PVRS assessment as well as snow and salt.
Second.
That's why it's so high.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Review and approval of minutes.
I move that we approve the,
I have an edit. Oh,
Oh.
I'm sorry, that's for discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a couple, go ahead.
I move that we approve
Do
the.
you want her edits first?
No, they got to open it.
It's up to you.
It's just one little thing.
One little thing, go ahead.
I was going to suggest, we listed the years of service for one of our deceased and not the other, so I was just going to suggest that we add 17 years of service to the first recognition of service.
Oh,
Got that,
nice.
Sandra? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Dee. With the edit.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think we need a
Didn't catch
whole-
that.
Yeah. I move that we approve the minutes of March 18th, 2025 as amended.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
great.
Okay. Well, close enough. Now I'm not gonna get into anything big. So let's, Pioneer Valley Regional School Committee and Administration.
Hi, Melissa. And Rena.
Whoever needs to come up, if you can always add another chair. I don't know if you, you're on your own?
I'm on my own.
Melissa. Oh, here's Patricia.
She's just on her. Okay. The stairs get me every time.
No kidding, me too.
Hi. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Select Board. Thank you for the opportunity to share the district's perspective on important financial and legal matters. I'm Melissa Gary. I'm the parent of 2 students at the Pioneer Valley Regional School, a Bernardston resident, and the chair of the Pioneer Valley Regional School Committee. I'd like to thank and recognize members of the school committee who have joined us this evening, Stephanie Arroyo of Leiden and Rena Dastis of Northfield. You may have already noted I'm striking a more formal tone this evening, and that is purposeful. The gravity of our concerns requires that we share our perspective with clarity and documentation. I appreciate that you have scheduled 30 minutes for this important agenda item. My prepared remarks shall take approximately 13 minutes. I would like to address 3 concerns: the role of the school committee under Massachusetts law as the elected body overseeing schools, challenges with communications with and among town officials, and misinformation shared by town officials regarding the district. I will end on a hopeful note, sharing positive news about the district. I will invite you, members of the Select Board, the Town Administrator, and the Finance Committee to join us in celebrating the growth and positive change our district has seen in the last few years. Our district is a regional school district. There are many state laws that address all public school districts in our state, and there are additional laws that are specific to regional school districts. For example, MGL Chapter 71, Section 16 makes clear that a regional school committee has additional powers and duties that exceed those of a municipal school committee. A regional school district, for example, may sue and be sued, acquire property, incur debt, issue bonds and notes, assess member towns, etc. In Massachusetts, the school committee of a regional school district is a separate legal entity from town boards or committees. The regional school district is not a department of the town and has powers that exceed those of any town department. Select boards and finance committees are not public bodies that oversee the regional school district or its budget. That role belongs to the school committee, 603 CMR 41.05. The town meeting is the local appropriating authority for our district, not the select boards or finance committees, 603 CMR 41.01. This means town voters, not the select boards or finance committees, to decide whether to approve the school district budget. However, on multiple recent occasions, members of the Northfield Finance Committee have asserted that they are the public body charged with the oversight of public schools. This is incorrect. The Mass Association of School Committees, citing MGL, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 56, and MGL, Chapter 71, Section 37A, states that the school committee functions as the public oversight for the use of public funds in pursuing a public good, that of public education. At a meeting of the Northfield Finance Committee on March 18th, 2025, the chair said that, "I don't think schools recognize sometimes that we hold the purse strings. We pay your salaries." That would be incorrect. The local appropriating authority for the regional school district is town meeting. Example, the residents of the towns, and not the FinCom or the Select Board. See 603 CMR 41.01. Several weeks earlier, on February 10th, 2025, a member of the Finance Committee asserted that we are a financial oversight body of the town of Northfield. It's incumbent upon the departments and committees and various other representatives, that we oversee their budget, because that is our job, oversight. That is incorrect. The legal structure in which the regional school committee provides oversight to the school district was emphasized only yesterday, on March 31st, when the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, issued guidance titled District and School Finance, Municipal Approval of a Regional School District Budget. The following guidance is issued in response to questions that have received concerning the appropriate manner in which the regional school committee's adopted budget is to be voted by the member municipalities of the regional school district. The guidance is provided to clarify these requirements and to remind all stakeholders that the appropriating authority of each member municipality must be given the opportunity to vote on the regional school committee's adopted budget and its assessment as certified by the regional school committee's treasurer. The clear language in this legislation, MGL Chapter 71, Section 34, gives the authority to consider and act on the approval of a regional school committee's adopted budget to the appropriating authorities of the member municipalities. Such authority was not provided in law to select boards or finance committees. My emphasis. We are deeply disturbed by the Finance Committee's vote to neither recommend nor not recommend the fiscal year 26 budget. We note that one member in a public meeting on March 3rd, 2025 said the following: "My only concern is the fact that they never came before us." It was certainly striking when that same member said that the district's responsibility is to come to us. We wouldn't accomplish our mission. I just think it's a slippery slope. No, you come to me or you come to us. Then that basically emasculates us. I repeat my earlier statements. Neither a select board nor a finance committee has fiscal oversight over a regional school district. The role of the finance committee in this district is to make an informed, dispassionate recommendation about the school committee's proposed budget. The comment regarding emasculation is neither dispassionate nor informed. The apparent misunderstanding among some town officials about the governance of the regional school district extends to the approval of the regional district agreements and amendments to those agreements. For instance, at a joint meeting of this body and the Finance Committee on March 18th, 2025, a select board member made the following statement regarding the process of seeking review by DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, for a revised district agreement. They, the school committee, is relying on DESE advice, even though DESE doesn't have the final and it's not an approval authority in any legal sort of way. This is incorrect. The Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education is clearly identified in both law and regulation as the final approving authority. See CMR 603-41.03, Section 4. The Commissioner shall approve or disapprove a regional district agreement and any subsequent amendments to the agreement based on review and recommendation by department that the agreement meets the standards in 603 CMR 41 and applicable law. The decision is of the Commissioner shall be final. The Commissioner's approval authority for district agreements is not an obscure footnote in the law. It is a central tenet in how regional district agreements must be approached. The need for Commissioner approval has been discussed at many meetings of the District Agreement Subcommittee and the multiple public forums the district has held over the past 5 months. The district seeks to communicate transparently and effectively with town officials. For instance, before beginning this year's budget development cycle, we sent email invitations to the chair of the select board, chairs of the finance committees, and town administrators in all 3 member towns. I have concerns that those emails have not been consistently shared with all members of the relevant bodies. Unfortunately, this would not be the first time this has taken place. In the spring of 2022, it became apparent that officials charged with disseminating district information about the budget development process had repeatedly failed to do so. Between December 13th and January 15th, 2025, the district sent 5 emails with notice of upcoming meetings and budget development calendar, draft versions of the development budget. We made clear in emails both on December 23rd and January 14th that the district would not be holding individual meetings with towns and instead warmly invited town officials to participate together at Pioneer. Northfield officials participated only sporadically in the budget development process. In fact, the absence of Northfield at the table was noted by officials from other 2 towns at a meeting on January 13th, 2025, when the superintendent followed up the next day with an email to the chair of the select board and the chair of the finance committee. Neither official responded. This is not the first time that Northfield has been notably missing from the district's budget development process. Several years ago, the superintendent sent a special email to Northfield officials advising them of their absence in the process, and that has also been noted. It's surprising, therefore, to hear the chair of the finance committee assert on January 16th at public forum number 3 to discuss the draft agreement the following. I think one of the best things we could possibly do from now on when you start your budget is invite the finance committee. I will send one person from the finance committee for every one of your meetings, and they will report back to the full committee. Here's our concern. A Northfield resident listening to the chair's comment could understandably take away the impression that the district had failed to notify the town of its budget development process. That would be incorrect. The chair had received 5 emails from the district about the process before he made this misleading statement in public. Mischaracterization of the district has extended to unfounded complaints by town officials about the school committee's consideration of their concerns related to the draft district agreement. Town officials have asserted at multiple meetings that we are looking to have them listen to us, and it doesn't seem like they are. So far, they have said, no, we don't want to adjust our language at all. The fact is that the school committee has given fair and public consideration for every suggestion put forward by the towns with excellent documentation. For example, on our meeting on December 19th, 2024, the district brought forward an organized, respectful list of 28 suggested edits and concerns, including 24 specifically brought forward by the towns. Of the 24 suggested edits, the school committee agreed to 10. We did not agree to 9, and we noted that 5, DESI would not approve of the remaining 5. This record hardly constitutes a failure to listen. It does constitute the responsible action of the school committee as an elected body in charge of the schools to exercise its informed discretion. When the school committee did not agree to every edit suggested by the towns, it was not an act of disrespect nor a failure to listen. To summarize, I have shared concerns about an apparent misunderstanding of how regional school districts are governed, challenges with the sharing of information among town officials, and misstatements made by town officials about the district. We can together do better. The district has been widely recognized by our community and state education officials for its remarkable improvements. We are addressing long-standing facility issues. We have reduced staff turnover. We have vastly improved financial operations. We are identifying new curriculum, reinvigorating our athletics program, and receiving frequent recognition in the local press for all the above. Our request to you. We hope that the Northfield town officials will consider what I have shared carefully. Our intention is to seek better alignment between the town and positive trajectory of the district. We ask that you ensure that statements about the district are accurate and that you provide town residents with complete information. We most certainly need your critical questions. We also, however, need your support. We believe that you could become champions of the revitalized school district that serves our communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the select board members, for the opportunity to share the district's perspective with you this evening.
Tricia, you have anything to add?
The chair is making remarks. If there are questions that the chair needs information, help with, I'm happy to help.
Okay. Any questions from anybody up
Yeah.
here on this?
I have one. So when the finance committee came forward, they asked about separating parts of the budget, and I'm confused about that. Can you explain?
I think
Like
what
capital
they're
versus the.
So what they're talking about is in the new district agreement, the draft district agreement, there is a portion that talks about when the district presents its budget, included within the budget are capital projects. It is silent on whether the town can divide the two on their warrants and have the budget and then the capital projects. However, by law, if the budget, let's say, was voted affirmative and passed, but the capital projects were voted down, the bottom line gets voted down and your budget gets voted down.
Oh, okay.
It will not pass.
So you can't, there was an urge to separate those two, but you can't separate them because they're essentially one unit.
Yep, go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering if it would be helpful if the select board wanted to send questions about either the draft district agreement or the budget. If you were to send those in writing, we can make sure that our financial whiz person
Okay.
provides you with complete information.
We're gonna, Thursday, we're gonna be going over the lawyer's response. We haven't had a chance to look at that yet. And we'll send you questions
Great. Right.
on that.
Right.
And thank you for taking it off the warrant. We really didn't think there was gonna be enough time.
Yeah.
But we wanted to get it right, wanted to make sure the people of the town were properly informed,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and that was our intent also. So it was at the January meeting that the town said that they would, as soon as possible, get the draft district agreement out to the lawyer. It took 5 weeks for that to happen.
Yeah.
So we had made a date in January to then meet at the end of February to get the lawyer response. The town showed up and didn't have any response.
No.
So then we made the March 20th public forum, hoping that the towns would get together and review the attorney's remarks.
Mm-hmm.
The town did not come to that meeting with any remarks. Then we were asked to delay it even longer and asked to make a meeting after April 17th. So I sent an email out asking to the towns, could we meet April 17th? Would that be amenable? I'm still waiting to hear if the towns will meet with us and host a 7th public forum on the district agreement.
We'll have to, do you want all 3 towns?
Yeah, exactly how we've been doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check on that Thursday.
Yeah, so that's
Are you
what
gonna
we're,
be there, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The date of that is when?
the date of,
The 17th.
well, that's what we proposed, but nobody has confirmed.
Yeah,
That-
we haven't met as a body, the 3 towns.
Right,
So,
right.
Trying to find times to
Yeah.
get everybody there.
Mm-hmm. I understand that.
Would you be comfortable sharing a?
Yeah, so
copy of the remarks?
that's the other, so our
Oh, yeah,
remarks, yeah, I should have added it in the end. We will share this with you, electronically,
Okay.
so you can go through all, and we'll have things
Yeah.
hyperlinked and,
Well, they're public remarks, so once you've,
correct.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Go ahead.
Just clarifying.
Yeah.
So first of all, thanks for correcting me on the DESI comment. I guess what I'm curious about then is what do you view the roles of the towns? Since the towns got together, now minus Warwick, got together and created the district to begin with.
Yeah.
What do you view the roles of the towns as? Right,
I
if
believe-
Desi's, just
yeah.
let me finish for a second.
Yeah.
My thinking is, so I was incorrect on Desi, but
Yeah.
a lot of the feedback that I've seen is from what Desi's response was in some of the different iterations of the district agreement, which is fine. That
Yeah.
makes total sense that the school committee would be working with Desi.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because, anyway, I'm just curious, what do you view the role of the towns then in this process, right? Because part of our challenge,
Yeah.
however inelegant it gets executed,
Yeah.
is we have 3 finance committees and 3 select boards trying to get together and go to invited things
Yeah.
with the school committee,
Yeah.
some of which were not on nights conducive to our meetings,
Right,
right?
right.
So there's always going to be this,
Right.
in my 5 years on the select board, there's always a problem with schedules.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, what do you view the role of the towns then and their
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah.
And especially the ones that will now come out of the next process, hopefully on the 3rd, because that's when we're going to be reviewing the substance from the lawyer.
Right.
What do you view the role of the towns then in the concerns that they have
Yeah.
in putting those forth?
Yeah. So I
And
think-
how would those be responded to, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
Follow-up question.
So I think what we've done. So I was on the district agreement subcommittee when we were doing kind of the nitty gritty work of the district agreement.
Last
You-
year when Bernie and I were going?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
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 And then when we had a district agreement that had kind of passed muster with Desi for many things, we said, hey, let's get together as a collaborative manner, have some public forums, towns come to us. And so we hosted the first public forum in the Kiva, and many town officials were there. And at times it was tense, and there was that same feeling of we haven't been included, even though we had posted. We made a distinct choice to host every public forum on Thursdays because we knew that was a date that was often not a scheduled meeting with towns. And so from that first and second public meeting, the public forum that we had with the towns, that's where our list of the 24 town suggestions came from. And then as a school committee, we discussed them and went over them and then sent it back to Desi. And then now the lawyer on the town side is looking at it. And so what was discussed and agreed upon at the public forum, I believe in January, was when we have the next public forum to discuss with all towns, the 3 towns, about what the lawyer's response is, that we would be looking at substantive changes, right, that the lawyer had
Right.
shared.
So that's helpful going over the process
Yeah,
because it indicates the amount of time and energy and steps that people have gone through.
right.
I'm just going to go back to my question because it's a simpler question, which is
Yep.
what do you view the roles of the town then? Because they created the district to begin with, and I think this is where some of the tension has come from.
Yeah.
So if there's a perennial concern about capital, and
Yeah.
I'm going to say perennial because I've heard that come up,
Yep.
not just with you guys,
Yep.
with like EMS is going to be here tonight, that will be, and then having gone to Bernardston's select board and finance committees, right, and other meetings, it's not an unusual question. It's
Right.
actually pretty frequent. So
B, I'd like to answer. May I answer your question?
on the roll,
Yeah.
like where do you
So-
see us all fitting in, right, if you guys are driving the process, so to speak?
Yeah. So there are multiple documents to which we can look for guidance. There is the existing district agreement, which is silent on any role for the select board or finance committee, except for the select board's role on placing a draft revised district agreement on the spring town meeting warrant or a special town meeting warrant called for the purpose thereof. So I want to say that again. Under the existing district agreement, which is the legal charter that binds the three towns into a regional school district, you have no statutory role, none. You have a transaction. I'm sorry, but that is the case. And I'd like to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have a transactional role, which is to place the amended district agreement on the warrant. I have been scrutinizing state law and state regulations to learn more, to educate myself better. There is very little about select boards or finance committees in the law or regulation when it comes to regional school districts. So this might make you unhappy, but the truth is you have no legal oversight over the district. I'm sorry, B, I'm speaking,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, sure.
You have no statutory oversight over the district. The elected legal body that exercises financial oversight is the school committee. Finance committees, as far as I can tell, have no statutory oversight over the district. My interpretation of reading everything I can get my hands on is that the finance committee's very important role is to make a recommendation to the local appropriating authority about the proposed regional district budget. For regional school districts in towns that use a town meeting form of government, the local appropriating authority, which is a term used all over the place in these laws, is town meeting. It is not the select board. It is not the finance committee. And that might be discomforting to some, right? It would require a cognitive shift, given what we have heard repeatedly from some town officials, expressing what some might view as some resentment. The buck stops with us. We hold, these are quotes, we hold the purse strings, we pay the salaries. That is an incorrect understanding of law and regulation. So if you're asking the superintendent about the role, not of the towns, because there are two things. There are you, town officials, and there are town residents. Town residents take the vote on the district agreement. Town residents, as the local appropriating authority, take the vote on the budget. You put the budget, and that guidance yesterday from DESE was striking, right? And they opened up with saying, look, we've gotten questions from municipalities. We need to make this really clear. You don't have authority under the law to do anything other than put the regional district budget on the warrant as it has been voted by the school district and sent to, and the assessments as certified and sent to you by the district treasurer. You have no other option under the law. So this probably is going to require some cognitive shift, and I feel really hopeful. As the chair said when ending her remarks, my goodness, when I first sat in this chair almost 4 years ago, weren't we in a different place? Right? So many systems weren't healthy.
Can I
We still
finish
had
up on my question?
We still had a state note. We didn't have great contracts in place. So many positive developments have taken place with your support, and we're seeking even more support. And we hope that there could be some shift and some course correction so that select board and the finance committee become champions, critical champions. Ask us tough things, but we're doing really well. We are not the district we were 4 years ago, and we would ask that you recognize and respond to those changes. Sorry, Bea, I went on longer than I intended. My apologies.
Yeah, and so I'm clear on the statutory stuff. I'm really talking about working relationships then, which is, what is the role that you see for us, right? Are we just the pass-throughs then to get onto the warrant? Because we do actually have to make judgments. We do go to all these meetings. We do read all these documents.
Yep.
And when we don't go to these meetings, I do,
Right.
when I have something
Yeah.
else, I watch your
You've
school
been
committee.
very good
and-
about
Yeah.
bringing all of that
And
back.
if you don't hear from me, it means
So-
I have no problem.
I just want to make sure that so we can clarify all the legal stuff. The fact of the matter is, we still all have to work together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? As town leaders, we definitely want to work together, and I'm sure Finance Committee is the same. And they are the fiscal watchdog for the town body, right? That is their role. So if things are misspoken or misstated, that's great to correct people. I think it's always a little bit tense, to be honest with you, to only do it once.
Yeah.
And in this, in this kind of body. So the other question, so I still have two questions, which is, what role then do you view for us as constituents and town leaders? And then last year, I think, and certainly when I was chair, which was 2 years ago, based on some of the questions and the give and take, we started with a presentation at the beginning of the year for both the select board and the finance committee to kind of, and Patricia gladly and helpfully came in and said, here are all the things that we're anticipating as we go into the budget cycle. So we had kind of the heads up, it was great. And then we got into after you got through the budget process, then there was a summation.
Yeah.
I think that's what people are saying that they miss, whether they are saying it as gracefully as we would like or elegant as we would like. Personally, that's what I miss. And I thought we had established that, and then all of a sudden that's no longer in play. And then we are in the position of different people taking different roles in different meetings and then trying to share that information. And again, as I said, coordinating that with 2 other towns. So that's on top of all the other things that everybody does, right?
Yeah.
And that was been one of the, I think, discussions I had with Raina a long time ago is not everybody can go to every other meeting.
No.
Either way.
No.
So, then my question is then on terms of solving all of the sins and transgressions that you've listed, is in terms of solving that, what role would you like to see? And I'm hoping it's collaborative and not subservient,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of the law.
Right.
And also, there were a couple of mechanisms in place that I thought actually made the last 2 years go way smoother.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing them
Yeah.
this year. I'm not feeling them. So maybe that's something we can bring into the April 3rd meeting as well and kind of brainstorm there. But I would be curious on what your feedback is.
So
On-
I'm hearing
on
more
what
of a
are-
so the role is absolutely collaborative, and that's what I was trying to get to. I want to make sure that sometimes, like you said, Bernie, silence is because I don't have any questions, right? Like I don't like everything. I watch your meetings. We have these different quotes that we've used tonight because I watch the FinCom meetings and so it's a collaborative process, and I just want to make sure that everyone on the select board is getting all of the emails that we send, because my gosh, every member of this select board, I hope, would be, gosh, the district is sending us another email, the district is sending us another public forum to come meet with us, the district is inviting us to another budget meeting, and I'm hoping that that communication is happening and that you are getting many emails that are forwarded that are warmly welcoming you to and joining us with the budget
But
process.
you don't have to, you can just send them
Yeah.
to us, if you're willing, I'm not trying
Yeah.
to add something to your list.
No.
You can send it to us individually.
If that-
We're citizens, it's not something we're debating, you're
Yes.
just saying, here's a meeting.
Yes, and if that
getting
works
those.
better
We've been
for
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry to ask, because I know that's like
I-
adding another thing to your list, but
Right, no,
but
Well,
if
we
you're already
have been
sending them,
forwarded them
Yeah.
to everybody.
yeah.
if you're already sending them,
Yeah.
and then I had a couple of
That's
comments. So number one, the FinCom, as I understand it, also answers to town meeting, right? Town meeting, like their FinCom is appointed by town meeting and answers to town meeting, isn't that right?
Appointed by the moderator.
Appointed by the moderator, I'm sorry.
But you're
And
right.
it's an
It's
it's
the
an
legislative.
instrument
They're the
of town.
They
legislative
make a recommendation
portion
to town
of
meeting.
Right.
yeah.
And then as far as input from citizens and input from select board, not to put words in your mouth, but I'll
Yeah.
tell you what my understanding was,
Yeah.
is that the public forum, when people show up and say stuff to the school committee,
Right.
that's the input that the citizens do, that's the input
Yeah.
that, I guess the select board does, right? Because we're not, I mean, we're separate entities, so I'm a citizen though, but I can show up at the
Absolutely.
school board meeting and speak as a citizen. And I want to make a point, because I don't have a kid in the school system,
Yeah.
that I'm still a taxpayer and I can still, as
Yeah.
a citizen, can show up and make comments. to the-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
You know, as Melissa pointed out, so we just pulled some emails. You know, here's 9 emails we sent about budget development, and here, please come, please
Yeah,
come,
yeah.
please come. Follow up, everything's on the website. You know, draft version 1, draft version 2, draft version 3. It becomes a little tricky when we hear town officials say things, and these statements were made during this budget development cycle. They don't want me up there. They don't want to answer my questions. They wouldn't allow us to ask it. These are quotes. They wouldn't allow us, from finance committee members, they wouldn't allow us to ask questions.
That they're saying about the select
About
board?
the school, no, I'm saying about
I mean,
the
the
school
school
About the
committee.
school committee.
Okay, I'm
Correct.
sorry.
Yeah.
And that is simply not true. So B, you are correct. There are times I've really enjoyed coming here and sharing information. And we had to make a decision. Coming in front of the towns at times was at great cost to district representatives, given the mistreatment by some town officials who would interrupt us, who would not allow us to answer questions, who would raise their voices at us, and I'm talking among the 3 towns, who accused us of financial malfeasance, of breaking the law on camera, suggesting all of our salaries should be cut. It became untenable for me, as the lead administrator and supervising my financial manager, to continue coming out to the towns. And the school committee, and for this I am so grateful, said, then don't go. We made it clear, you are welcome to come up to Pioneer. I actually think in some ways it's a much better process, because when the 3 towns are there together, you can hear each other. So we carried on with the same process, which is a nice clear calendar, emails before and after meetings, posting things, and frankly, Northfield, you didn't show up. And it's not the first time you haven't shown up. I've got emails upon emails. A couple years ago, you weren't showing up. We had reached, at that time we did budget development meetings, and then 3 hearings, they shouldn't have been called hearings, and then the full public hearing. We'd gone all the way through here, we're on the 2nd meeting that shouldn't have been called a hearing, and that day I sent an email to Northfield officials saying, Northfield, you haven't been here. We want to make sure you're getting these emails. And at that meeting, 2 of you came in a little bit late, but you came, and I don't know what would have happened had I not sent that email. This is not the first time. It is not the first time that there have been issues with forwarding information. In the spring of 2022, I sat at this table and heard members of the select board berate the district for failing to inform you about the budget development process. And I stopped the meeting and said, what are you talking about? We were sending emails to the town administrator and the then chair, and I said, I will go home tonight, and before I go to sleep, I'm going to forward you 3 of those emails, and I did. 3 sample emails saying, budget development, come join us, but I never heard back from the town. So B, the reason why I never heard back. No one ever said, gosh, superintendent, school committee, we're kind of sorry about that. That's on us, we need to do a better job sharing information, but you were sending information, we apologize. I appreciate the school committee's support for my management of my personnel. I hope that next year we would be coming back to you at your table. If we do, there will have to be different understandings about how we talk with each other. I'm sharing truthfully and frankly.
Well, I do appreciate that. I will say that I know Bernie and I made it a point to go to all of the meetings last year, pretty much. And then this year, I know that I was at your budget hearings. I can't speak for everybody,
Of course.
but if we're going to go through the list again, which I don't think is helpful tonight, to be honest with you, I have a long agenda. Maybe it makes sense to work on these communication things have come up before.
Mhm.
I know when I became chair, and I think Julie was the chair, and then it went to Raina. And so Julie and I had started working together, and then Raina and I had started working together. So perhaps some conversation needs to occur on a one-to-one level between you and Bernie, for example, or whoever the next chair is, and come up with some, set the tone for each of the boards if that is indeed the problem. I will say also, financially, when we're looking at somewhere around a $10 million budget, and half of that at least is the school, is the district, then you can understand why people are passionate,
Absolutely.
right? Because we're all
Absolutely.
passionate about,
Absolutely.
we're all passionate about a huge portion of the budget. So there is a sense of ownership that people have about the recommendations that they make to town meeting and the responsibilities that we take on leaders. So
Yeah.
I think I feel badly that you've felt mistreated at whichever meeting. I do remember one online with another town. I feel bad that you feel that way.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Right. I'm just going to acknowledge whatever people's reality is, but we need to somehow move forward and
Yep.
and that needs to start occurring in individual conversations
Right.
or phone calls, because pretty much everybody has my number. I know that, and nobody's ever reached out to me to say, "Hey, are you getting all the emails?"
Right.
Or because I'm working through Bernie, our chair, I'm working through the finance committee if I can't go to a meeting because now I have FERCog responsibilities, and we're working through Jane Dutcher. So it sounds like some things are getting lost in the person-to-person aspects of this, and I'd like to see that corrected, and would be happy to work on that offline. But
Right.
I think when we're all talking about somewhere of around $5 million and having it go up every year, you can understand why people are emotional.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Right?
And Keith had a great question about the, and I still encourage you, Keith, if you have a question about the budget, to email me and we can get Jordan to answer it. But the response to you was, these are the questions we asked and we never get answers to.
Yeah.
And that question was
wasn't
never
fair.
asked.
That was really
So
unfair.
that didn't feel good, because that question had not been asked and there hadn't been a lot of participation. So I feel like you were also unfairly given a response that absolutely could have deserved a response. So I really want, everybody to feel like the emails work back and forth and the phones can work back and forth, and we can start to, reinvigorate a collaborative relationship. And it's just based on some of the comments and the misrepresentations that have been recent that we asked for this. And again, I really appreciate you allowing the time for us to come to you, and share these
I
concerns.
have a specific question, and I'm not sure, you can tell me if it's not a good
Yeah,
time or whatever, but something that was mentioned was something about the number of kids leaving the high school. Do you have the numbers on that?
Yeah, so if you send me that, I'll get you numbers and.
Okay.
We, like every single other district, let me say that every other district that feeds into Franklin Tech have seen large numbers of our 8th grade students head over to Tech. It's a problem for all of us. Here's what we're doing to stem the tide. We have a fantastic new principal up at Pioneer. She is working wonders already. Last year when we opened up school choice seats, we had one family send us a 7th grader. School committee voted on school choice seats maybe a month ago. We already have 8 7th graders coming in for next year. We believe we're going to have more Vernon students coming in for 7th grade because we have worked overtime. We have hustled trying to give information to Vernon and bring those families into the district. We have, and if you want to support the district, we'll make sure you get our fundraising email. For the first time in who knows how many years, We are sending kids to Washington DC next October. And you know how we structured it? 9th graders. You want to go to Washington? Stay in the school after 8th grade. It's now going to be rising 9th and 10th graders?
Rising 9th and 10th
graders.
they opened it up. Yep.
41 kids. 15% of the school has signed up to go to Washington DC next fall. For the first time in who knows how long, we have a middle school trip down to Broadway this spring. We have been courting Winchester to try and get new students, because if we can get more kids who pay really good tuition, and we're talking tuition in the $19,000, $20,000 range from both Vernon and if something works out with Winchester, 2 great things get to happen. We can invest in improved programming, and we can reduce town assessments, right? Both things get to happen. So if I get, if we get, let's say we get 5 extra school choice kids, they're just $5,000, but I'll take them. If we get 4 more Vernon kids per year than we have had, let's say we get 5 Winchester kids, we're talking $200,000 a year we didn't have before. Multiply that over 6 years, and let's say we continue to have those kind of numbers, that's an extra $1.2 million annually coming into the district that we can invest and use to reduce your assessments. So that's a tangential answer to the question, what's happening?
One
We're
quick,
working really hard on it.
one quick on that, but they wouldn't be part of the district, so they're not paying the capital, right? So
They're
if,
paying tuition.
correct, so my point is, the capital burden, the burden for capital costs then falls on the 3 towns, right?
Our revenues increase. So no matter what, our revenues increase. And please don't quote me, I'm not promising any percentage on this, right? When our revenues increase.
We're just gonna put it in the minutes, but that's okay.
Well, it's fair to say this. Here's how we're conceiving of it. We use that money to reinvest into the district, make Pioneer even more attractive as a secondary school, because Pioneer is the only school where we have a real opportunity to increase revenue for the district. That's why we're focusing a lot on improvements there. If we have greater revenue, your assessments are reduced. So whether or not it's on a capital or operating, the town's taxpayers will pay less money if we bring in money from other towns. I don't know how else to say it. It would be good for us. So I'm happy to
So
send
it'd
you
be
numbers about.
interesting, well, we can talk more about that, but it'd be interesting to see the projections, because right now, the feeling is that it's on the 3 towns, right, for the most part. So until you get more students in the high school, if you look at the enrollment numbers in 9 through 12,
Yeah.
so like 11th grade has what, 16 kids in it?
Yeah, that class is the
The
aberrant
anomaly.
class. None of the other
But there's
classes are
been
like that.
aberrant
Not
numbers.
to, but not
Yeah.
to that degree. No, nowhere,
Well,
pardon me, but
I-
nowhere close to that.
it'd be helpful to actually go through high school enrollments at some
We
point.
go through high school enrollment every
Every
month
school
at school committee.
No, I
We
mean,
just sent enrollment
as
to
a-
Andrea.
You've got it in last year's report, and you'll
Yeah.
have it in this
yeah, I
coming
have the
report.
spreadsheet. It would be nice to actually have
Have
a
it.
discussion about demographic trends, and how you see all of this happening, because in the
We did do
fall,
that during
Yeah.
budget development. Sorry, but we did cover, Jordan covered that during budget development. His presentations were amazing. We covered enrollment. Happy to talk about it again, but I don't want to give the impression
Obviously,
that
I
we
have-
didn't do
I
that.
have,
When you came and had all the paperwork, it was in there. But the reason I was asking, is it came up at the other night's meeting, and so I
Yeah.
was wondering if there had been a drastic change. I was just trying to get a beat on.
No.
Yeah, and I think it was specifically about the 10 students who were leaving.
All those numbers are in last year's report for last year, and will be in this year's report,
Yeah.
which we hopefully will get to the printer
Yeah.
tomorrow.
You
Again,
can get a
we
lot of
get,
numbers from Desi
Yeah.
we
All
get,
kinds of numbers.
online.
and just to clarify, I think I'm looking to have a different discussion than what you were.
That-
Okay.
We
Yeah.
would happily entertain that.
Otherwise, I
discussion.
wouldn't ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
All right, thanks so much.
If I can
Thank
ask
you.
a question?
Oh, yeah.
May I?
yeah, of course.
I can appreciate you not wanting to get up in front of boards and committees that mistreat you, so I have no ill will towards that behavior. I can appreciate that. Can you explain, because when I was in the finance committee, and it's hearsay, but apparently this had been going on forever, for want of a better phrase. What was the genesis of not sending is it Jordan to the finance committee to talk about the budget? Because I enjoyed,
Yeah,
Those
he's
meetings?
amazing, yeah.
so what was the genesis of that?
The genesis of that is that I want to keep Jordan as the district's financial advisor, as our budget manager.
He didn't want to be harassed? Is that
He does
the-
not want to be harassed. He does not want to be mistreated. He lives 45 minutes away. He has a young child. He has no interest in being up here at 8 o'clock in front of a board that is being disrespectful. This is what it is, people. And
I'm
anyone
asking.
who's been in
Yeah.
his presence knows he's extraordinary.
Yeah.
He's extraordinary. He is my ace. He is my person. Among a team of people who are so good, our new director of teaching and learning started today. I want to keep him.
Mhm.
I need to keep myself sane, right? Like, I'm happy to work a gazillion hours, like, that's just part of the job, I'll do it, fine. But it's pretty crummy to have town officials looking at you, telling you that your salary should be cut. And the financial malfeasance thing, being interrupted, being asked
Okay.
questions and then not,
So-
maybe I can stop, but,
Well, no, he
questions
asked.
So I can, okay, I thought you might say that. And my follow-up question, if I might, was that communicated to either that finance committee or that select board, hey, we're not coming back because of this?
Yeah, we talked about it in public on multiple occasions. And that meeting the second meeting where there were no representatives from Northfield,
Mhm.
the chair of another select board asked us, and we talked about it at that meeting. But we've talked about it, school committee has talked about it at multiple meetings, and when we said, yeah, we're not gonna send Jordan out. However, we'd be happy to schedule another meeting with you. And 2 dates were mentioned, we sent back one of them and said, yeah, we could do it on that date, and we'll invite the other finance committees. Happy to do that, we'll do another presentation, and that was not the desired outcome from the finance committee.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thank
Yeah. And I'll get you guys, we'll get you some sort of recap from Thursday's meeting.
Oh, we're gonna attend,
This-
yeah, we're gonna be there.
Oh, this coming Thursday?
Yeah, we'll be there in the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll see
You
you
would
then.
not miss that.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Matt. Hey, Matt. You want to come up?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna let these folks make
I'm
their way
just gonna
up
get
here.
a glass of water. It's really dry. in
Go
here.
ahead, yeah.
Okay.
You can listen, B, while I'm talking. Good woman. No.
Oh, nice.
Okay. First thing we're gonna do, we have a couple corrections. Our last meeting, we were given incorrect data on the grading
Yes, we didn't
step.
have it in front of us. I
Didn't have it in
apologize
front of
for
us
that.
and we
We're
misstated
all
it.
gonna throw Sandra under the bus because nothing happens properly when she's not here.
She wasn't here. And it was-
Positive of Sandra's value.
That's a backhanded compliment.
She wasn't here.
It
and
was
we-
very backhanded.
That's
but
some
no.
very heavy
I-
documentation right there for a bigger raise
Well,
next
normally,
year too.
normally she writes those letters up, and so since I was putting the meeting out, and I didn't realize I didn't have those letters, so you didn't have the grade and step, so I apologize. That was, unfortunately, Sandra was sick, and she's allowed to be sick, it's okay.
Okay,
We
so,
really don't blame her.
so we'll get that out of the way first.
Just vote to
Ellie?
amend?
What?
Yeah,
Can we just vote to amend?
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna, a motion to amend the grade and step of Alicia Toa, per diem paramedic. We stated it as grade 11, step 1. It was supposed to be grade 10, step 1. Term expires 12/31/25.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna group, amend, motion to amend Courtney Danielson and Matt McCarthy per diem EMTs. We incorrectly stated grade 9, step 1. It was supposed to be grade 8, step 1. Terms expiring 12/31/25.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, got that done.
just so you know, the letters did go out correctly.
Yeah, the letters went out right.
They are not confused. which
They're
is
not confused.
Just me.
Okay. All right, and how do you want to do this with the intertown? We did get that in our packet to study, I don't know.
Do you want
I
to,
have questions. I know that'll surprise everyone.
I don't know if Bea wants to do a little, do you want to do a little introduction, since it came from the
She was,
task force?
she's
We
on the
both sit
task
on the
force.
task force, both of
Yeah.
us, yeah.
just need to collect myself.
Kind of how we got here.
So EMS has had agreements with the other 3 towns. They all came at different points. I think Bernardston was the first, so they've been in place for a while. And as a result of all working together, collaboratively, I might add, we applied for a grant that looked at quote-unquote regionalization, even though in effect we already had an organic regionalization. Many of the employees from the different towns are actually appointed to EMS as well. And I'm just going to point out also, because I don't think this has been clear, is that each of the other towns do their first, and I'm not, correct me on the language, do their first level response through their fire departments,
Yes.
right? Which Northfield does not. So it's always been a little bit in the grouping of the 4 towns. Northfield has always been a little different in that what might be handled by another town's fire department is actually handled by Northfield's EMS. So EMS does, first, for lack of a better term, first level response as well as advanced.
But that's covered by usage, right? Like the calculation of relative weighting
No, I'm
was by
talking about
usage.
who's responsible.
If I can just give a
Yeah.
quick clarification, so the response model when somebody calls 911 in Gill, Irving, and Bernardston elicits a simultaneous response from the fire department first responders in those 3 towns who all work from pagers, and from Northfield EMS, our ambulance. That's Gill, Irving, Bernardston. So we have representatives who are trained as first responders in those 3 towns. They get paged out, they come, they go to the scene, they start care or assist us with care. In Northfield, the model has always been that the first responder that goes out to a medical call in the town of Northfield is Northfield EMS, and the police department, who's on duty until their off-duty hours, also gets a simultaneous dispatch in our community. And so our police officers, which also occurs in the other 3 towns for certain types of calls, our police officers here in Northfield oftentimes are the other medical responder as first responders. I don't know the history of why that is. That's just what was here prior to me
Right.
coming to town.
I think it's worth noting because the other towns are already doing quite a bit of work in the response model,
Yes.
right? So, but that said, the concern came, and this is why each of the towns ended up with individual agreements at different points, is because they were finding there wasn't ambulance response coming or fast enough. And as Pete Shed from Bernardston used to say, we didn't know whether or not we needed to throw somebody in the back of the fire truck and go down 91 ourselves. So then when they started working with Northfield, those concerns all got erased. And so based on, I think, Bernardston's experience, other towns started, and that's where we are today. So after 2 years of working together formally on the task force, we've taken the elements that we already had in the agreements and we've put them into a new IMA. And there won't be any variation by town. It's one agreement as opposed to, I think at one point Bernardston's, and they all look similar, but they were not the same. So I think that's one of the outcomes of this, was to get an agreement that was the same for each town.
Just let me interrupt you. For citizens watching, what's an IMA?
An intermunicipal agreement, so basically a contract, right? Thank you. The initial, if I broke the last 2 years into into phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was all about figuring out the personnel model, and what we determined, which we already knew, but thankfully we had a consultant to help craft some numbers around it, was that most of the service that Northfield EMS was providing was really falling on 1 or 2, 3 shoulders. right? And so we were running the risk of burning people out and not really having a service. So we looked closely at personnel.
And it was determined to be unsustainable.
Correct.
We had no
Well,
sustainability,
yeah.
sustainability.
just from a common sense standpoint, but looking at it from an overall services model, yes on both counts. And
And it was noted that the service response was growing in every community.
correct. And also the options were starting to fall by the wayside too. So where people used to use private services, and particularly the one that we all know in Greenfield, they were moving more and more into a model of doing transport only and not immediate response. So there's a few trends that have been coming forth for all EMS services, right? Not just ours. And as a result, at the end of phase one, we determined that we wanted a working chief, meaning somebody who could be an EMS chief and be full-time and be a paramedic as well. And then that resulted in your hire. So and then we started on supposedly phase two, which was looking at the budget, moving forward on the facility, et cetera, and as well as moving forward on the intermunicipal agreement, or the IMA for short. And we looked at other governance models, I think, which came up in last select board meeting, like what are the different ways that you can regionalize, and the other, there's only one or two, the other models are really unusual models in terms of they haven't been used all that frequently, and one of them was new in Massachusetts, and also we're not a fire district. So one way that you could use the district model is EMS would be organized under a fire district, and Northfield does not have a fire district. Long story short, the task force decided that it made sense to keep it simple, don't break what was already working, and just do a new improved version, if you will, of the agreements between the four towns. So that's where we're at tonight.
If I can just elaborate a little bit,
Please.
and I have much respect for everything that just came before me tonight, but also understand that this creates many of the same kinds of questions likely. When I came on board in September, among the rest of the fire hoses I was drinking from, one was to
That's right,
quickly
you haven't been on that
understand
long either. So.
what all of the work prior had been, and the conversations of this task force working group with representation from all of the communities as well as input from these independent consultants was, and what the vision was for Northfield EMS in name as a ambulance service that would provide care to these four communities. Some of the highlights that came out of it, one of them was, to B's point, let's not reinvent the wheel or try to fix what's not broken. The statement made to me by representatives of all four communities was, Northfield EMS is working to serve our communities right now. We understand through the gap analysis we can do better. We have areas of opportunity, but the structure of having Northfield EMS as a town department under Northfield is working right now. And everybody agreed, is my understanding, at the task force level, that that is what they wanted to maintain. They did not want to maintain or develop something that shifted the organization, the control, the decision-making power to a separate entity. Again, I'm not trying to be negative to the regional school model, so please nobody hear that, but I just heard it said very clearly. The intention was that they believed in this group who has been governing and overseeing Northfield EMS and championing it. They believed in the collaborative approach of having people be able to share information and be involved with the conversations and make recommendations for the future of Northfield EMS, and that the hope was to develop an intermunicipal agreement that would still hold that intention clearly and hold that space through a an advisory board, excuse me, from the 4 towns that can advise with information from all 4 communities, from the select boards, from the finance committees, from the public safety officials of the fire departments and police departments, to do what's in the best interest of the public, and not shift that into any of these other types of models that they had looked at, where local control in some ways might be given up. And that I continue to hear from everybody that they like the ability to have me come to the select board here and answer these questions and be responsible to you all for providing this information and taking your input and using that as we continue to build out Northfield EMS to serve our communities.
You had,
Ready?
Yes.
So, well, something just came to mind while you were talking. What about having a member of the fire department as one of those committee members? Because that would be a reasonable,
You're talking about the
for
advisory board?
Northfield. Yeah.
So, as part of the IMA, it spells out that we will have representation. There's 2 spots to be appointed from each community. Some of the communities may choose to have a fire official be on that advisory board.
And in the other communities, they're the ones that are doing first response, so it would really make a lot of sense.
I will tell you that the fire chiefs of all 3, Gill, Bernardston, and Irving, have been very, very involved in the development and
Yeah.
all of the task force work well prior to mine. And as far as Chief Donnell goes here, he has absolutely been talked to about things. He's been a consultant. He's shared his opinions on stuff. And been read in, is my understanding anyways, to the work as it's gone forward. So I would say, yes, that is a possibility.
Okay. So when I was reading the agreement, it said that our EMS, that the new regional, is in charge of all of Irving. I thought we were only doing part of Irving.
We are in charge of a portion of Irving.
We should check the wording in the legal agreement then.
Did you happen to highlight a spot in here just
I
so
can
I can
send it
make,
to you.
if you would, please?
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought, I read it one thing and it did say a portion of Irving.
Okay, so I'll send you that. Maybe it was different in 2 different places or something.
The
like that.
intention is to cover the west section of Irving that we have been covering.
Because Orange covers the east,
Correct.
Right.
right?
And that's what I thought, and I was surprised.
And that's
to
what
see-
is going to continue, but if there's language, I appreciate the edit or the note.
Okay.
Yep.
So why is Northfield the only town responsible for the insurance? Wouldn't that be covered by the enterprise fund?
Yes and yes. So, yes and yes. So, in here, because Northfield EMS is licensed under the town of Northfield as a department of the town of Northfield, we maintain insurance coverage for EMS operations, and that is a piece of our operating budget. And so it is not a separate fee when we go through the budget line item by line item, which I think we did 2 months ago together, maybe. There was the indirect cost. Anything that is not a direct bill to Northfield EMS that I report to the town accountant and she pays out of our enterprise fund would be considered something that's an indirect cost and is a part of that line item.
Okay.
Separated out, that number, indirect cost, goes into our operating budget and it is shared through this agreement for cost sharing.
This is not on you, this is on my brain. I just want to rephrase so I make sure I understand, okay? An expense comes into the town of Northfield. The enterprise fund, which is the thing that collects the money from everybody, pays that expense. Is
Correct.
that correct? Great.
Yes,
thank you.
it's an accounting model.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
Is that the right way to say it? I just want to
yeah.
make sure.
I'm just going to clarify, just in case, so check me on this, Sarah. It's an account, so if something comes into the town, the treasurer will pay, but you're using the enterprise account? right? It's not like he's doing his own paying out of the bills
Yeah,
and
I
things.
understand.
Okay.
I don't
But
have a
then-
checkbook.
I got you, but the
Yeah.
money comes from the enterprise fund, was my question.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But just in case, because I know some other folks I think in the building committee meetings that we've had who were in the audience were asking questions about the enterprise fund. So I just want to enhance what you were
Okay.
asking. Thanks.
And the last one, you've heard it before, but, so Northfield is providing the outlay for the building. And shouldn't we have like a credited deduction to our contribution to offset the fact that we're responsible for the building? I mean, we're providing the however many millions of dollars, right now 2 million, right, 2.1, to buy this brand new building. So if we have put out the money to do that, shouldn't that be accounted for in the weighting?
So I'm going to try and answer this in two parts, and forgive me, and if I go long, Chairman, please stop me.
Yeah, because we talked about this the last meeting.
We
But
did.
this is specific, this is
I
actually a different
understand,
question.
and I'm going to try and answer it as concisely as I can. The building that houses the department, which is a town department, Northfield EMS, is provided by the town. The operations, maintenance, upkeep of that building comes from the Northfield EMS budget. That operations, upkeep, everything else is maintained by
The enterprise.
the enterprise fund, thank you, and is covered under this IMA in section, I don't know, somewhere in there it says that all of that is equally divided around. If, and this was discussed in multiple ways prior to my being involved in an executive committee and things that I'm not necessarily aware of, but if it was to be proposed that a building was purchased collaboratively by the four towns, that would then make it a asset of the four towns, or we would have to go to the four towns and ask them for that money. My guess, again, I can't speak for any discussions or anything else, would also mean A, our assessment model would go up exponentially for all four towns. And B, we would need to be looking at a different intermunicipal agreement and structure whereby all of the assets are shared and owned by the four towns,
I understand.
rather than all of the assets are owned and retained by the town of
I
Northfield.
feel like we're talking parallel to each other, because what I'm saying is, we have four piles of money that are coming from different towns. And they're determined by the amount they use and the amount of money that citizens make and that kind of thing, right? They're equal, they are equal but not equivalent. Different amounts of money, but
They're based
computed.
on utilization and population.
Right, okay. So Northfield's providing the building. Why don't we get a credit for that? Why don't we get a credit against the pile of money that we have to pay because we're the ones providing the building? That's my question.
I think the confusion comes in if you're going to do that, giving Northfield a credit or charging them extra differently it's an ownership interest. It's a stake in the building. So even when you pay rent, if for example you pay rent, you have an ownership stake. It's a rental ownership stake. You have certain rights under that. You have certain legal responsibilities as a landlord to a tenant. So in this case, we're saying the town owns the building. The town has all the rights in the building to buy, sell, fix, change, whatever you want. The upkeep cost, all of that goes into the assessment model and is shared equally. But the minute you start to give people a stake in the building by charging them rent or discounting yourself rent, there's a different change in the ownership model or the
Renters
legal.
don't own, they don't have an ownership right.
No,
to
no,
the
but
building.
you're taking the word ownership too seriously. What I'm saying is that when you rent to someone, they have a certain legal stake in what they get for that rent. There's laws all over the place about what a renter's legal rights are. So if we start renting the building, essentially taking rent, they have a different stake in that building than if the town says, no, we're not doing that, we own it. And you'd have to represent that in this intermunicipal agreement, because
Well, what we
now
can
they're paying towards some, and it's an ownership model. We say, oh, I'm ownership with a little o. When you rent a property, you have a certain ability to, under law, to have a stake in that by law.
Right,
So-
but we're not talking about rental anymore, that's what I mean, I'm talking about a credit to the town based on the fact that we are allowing use of the building. That's not a rental, so there's not an agreement. That's the kind of wording that you just write right into one of these agreements.
But it's our town department.
Well, how would you?
So-
I'm
It's
not
our
sure.
town department, like it's,
I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, that's, it doesn't seem reasonable to,
They rent from Sandry, so, but we're not talking about rent. We're talking about a credit to the $110,000.
Okay, so a credit, as I understand it, and I'm not the expert in this, I can do medicine, this is not my specialty, but as I understand it, a credit back is still a financial incentive, which then is very different than this mutual agreement that is supposed to be equal based on population and utilization for all 4 towns and their contributions.
But our
Also-
contribution is this bill, part of our contribution. is
Also,
building.
if this building was somewhere else, wherever it might be in Northfield, and we were using that space, if we take a credit or we charge and pay back and we shift funds, which is really what we're talking about, a credit would be a shift back in the accounting ledger from a positive to a negative to a positive, from the enterprise fund into the general fund. That is paying the town of Northfield for the space.
That's rent.
It's rent by definition.
So if
And
you
if
say
we
that-
pay rent, then we would have to apply that same standard to every other town department that uses a town building. The only way, in my understanding, for us to accomplish something like that would either be for this agreement to become something similar to what the school districts have, where they become autonomous and retain ownership in all of the assets, and we transfer everything in to that entity, or we continue to rent a space collectively like we are now, where everybody is sharing the burden. But if we're going to be housed as a town department in a town building that the town owns, I don't believe that we are able to transfer those funds.
I think the simplest way to put it too is that if you discount, and I'm just making up a number, Northfield $1,000 and the other 3 towns have to pay $333 more, is what you've done. So if you say you're paying less Northfield than your assessment because it's $1,000 less because you're getting some
Right.
kind of credit
We're
for
counting the
that.
contribution.
So now they pay,
That's one of
you
our
have to take it
contributions.
outside of the assessment model, because it has to come outside of the assessment model, because it would not go through the model. It would come outside of the assessment model and it would go to each one of them as a charge, which is then rent, or change the name of it, but it's essentially rent because we're getting a discount for the facility. You'd have to put that in the model here somewhere. How is that calculated? How is it changed over time? Is it based on EQV? Is it big? I mean, that's a
Right, that's
completely
what I'm-
different intermunicipal agreement. And just be careful, because basically you're giving them, you're charging them rent. And in return for that, you have to discuss the legal obligations that they're getting. And it isn't just, oh, we get to serve you, because that's what this is about. What do they get for paying additional, because we deducted ourselves for that cost? It's not the service. The service is spelled out in this.
It
So
really comes back to the task force
I mean,
looked at all of those models, is my
Yeah.
understanding, and came back to, with all 4 towns' input, representatives of all 4
Mm-hmm.
towns' input, that they wanted Northfield EMS to be truly a town of Northfield department.
And own all the assets.
And own the assets and manage this on behalf of the other 3 partners who want to participate in this program to keep it alive. That was at the task force level over, I can only imagine how many conversations to come to this model that we're in.
And remember, the town department gets to pass all of the cost of upkeep and operating into that assessment model.
Yeah.
So if the town were to have an EMS building all to themselves, which they did for years before any other partner was involved, that was 100% on Northfield. When you bring in the other members, now we're shifting heating, electrical into the assessment model, but upkeep, capital costs, if you need a new door, you need a new window, they're all gonna help pay for that. But the only benefit they get is the operation year to year. The town of Northfield will forever own those improvements. It's part of the town of Northfield's asset. And every vehicle and every piece of equipment that's bought as well.
But you're gonna buy those with enterprise fund money. It's not gonna be assessed to the town as a tax. If you need to buy a new ambulance, that comes out of your earnings, right?
That is my plan through this, and what we're proposing
not
as
on the
the
tax
task
rate.
force
Yeah, you're
is
right.
that
And this is the first year, this is what I was pointing out to somebody last week at a meeting. This is the first year that the other towns are kicking in on the ambulance. So that total number, this is why, I think I asked you this, and I think Jane Dutcher from Bernardston asked too, is, and this is why capital carries a lot of weight for people in Northfield, is, and other finance committees, is the total amount that you've quoted here and that was in the paper is for both capital and operating,
correct.
right? And so that number looks huge to people, but what's new this year also on top of it is that we're actually purchasing an ambulance the same time that we're implementing the new assessment model, right? So the flip side, the bright side of that is that the towns are actually now contributing to the ambulance before he has to then subtract the remaining funds from the enterprise fund.
If you go back a couple of years, Northfield residents paid the entire burden of a new ambulance. They
Correct.
financed it over 5 years.
Correct.
And Northfield paid for the
And
entire amount.
The other thing that I think we need to put back in these numbers too for folks before we get to town meeting is you're still paying, you meaning the EMS enterprise fund, you're paying the town of Northfield the indirect costs. So those come off of whatever the total amount is as well, right? In a way, mathematically.
Mathematically, they do appear in the budget, but they go through the formula. The other thing to keep in mind is when you see sewer, the way these budgets develop, sewer has a line that says owed to the town indirect. We've built many of those costs into this EMS because it came at a different time, came under a different model,
Right.
so that it's going through the formula. As it's easy to say indirect for sewer, it's one town's paying it. But we wanted to make sure those costs were built into the formula so that it's going through the formula to get those all incorporated by all the towns. So the cost of, using
Writing the checks, for example.
So
the
let me ask
accountant
you a question
costs,
about it.
right, all that's now actually baked into much of his budget.
So the money comes, so the individuals, you just mentioned it, so I'm gonna ask you, the individual towns, if there's a heating bill, the individual towns send a check for the
Nope.
heating bill, or they send it at enterprise?
So
enterprise
my
pays it?
budget proposal for this next year includes our best estimates on what all of our
Just like all
operating
the
costs are,
departments. Okay.
including
Yeah.
heat,
That's what I
fuel
thought, I was
for the
confused by
vehicles,
Andre's.
electricity,
And in this case,
insurance.
right, we've got
everything.
everything in, whereas when you see the indirect from sewer, that 41,000 includes the insurance for the employees and all that. That's been pulled out and made in the indirect cost, but it's all within the town. What we've done is baked those costs into his budget. So the insurance line item, all those things are baked in. One number runs through the formula, that everybody votes that number. When that checks are sent, and there's a discussion here about how they're billed, because basically we bill them, those feed into everything that then pays the bills. He submits the bills, he manages the department.
I think the bottom line is we're charging as much as we can charge to all the 4 towns because the budget is so well developed. That was part of the regionalization task force, was to develop a realistic budget, put the ambulances
And
on
capital.
yeah, let me finish. Sorry. To put the ambulances onto a schedule, right? Because we didn't have a real schedule before. So put as much into the budget as possible. Then that hits the assessment formula. And then that means all 4 towns, our partners, are paying as much as they possibly can that they have not paid for in the past. So for example, I'm just going to use the ambulance example. But then as a result of Northfield, I'm pointing at you, so the treasurer, everyone who's helping the enterprise fund operate, we're paying back Northfield for that time in
We
administration,
have a
correct?
formula that we're running through to
Right.
put it into the line items
Yes.
to incorporate that. So you don't see a separate indirect cost line item, but we've budgeted it into the bottom line budget so that it's running through the formula.
I'd like to also just kind of point out it as crazy and chaotic as this all feels, and the magnitude of presenting a budget with a bottom line over $1 million, which is a big number, and I understand that. Because of the way it's being formatted as an enterprise fund for the accounting mechanism, and because of the fact that EMS bills for some of our services and brings in other revenue, out of that just over $1 million total budget, including capital that we're asking for, the towns are only being asked to fund and support about a third of that.
Well, why is it on the warrant asking? That was another question I was gonna ask later on. We're being charged $100,000 and then we're voting to pay $1 million.
Because to
So-
spend it out of the enterprise
It's
fund, you have
all
to
in the
appropriate it.
enterprise fund, so the
Oh,
town
you're giving
has to
permission.
approve the big
Yeah.
picture, but really all we're
Yeah.
asking the residents to spend, $100,000
We
is a
should
lot of
clarify.
money.
Hopefully people
That's
will
why I
hear
wanna
that.
say
It's on
that
the
right
warrant.
now.
If you look at the
is-
warrant, you have.
I did look at the warrant,
EMS.
but it wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
EMS is really right now, and I didn't do the math out on a napkin yet, but is really only 30-something cents on the dollar for that total budget. What we're contributing at $100,000 and the other towns are contributing, so we're at 300 and something thousand dollars for the total town's collective
Right.
assessment,
And then you have more money
is
coming in.
the
Yeah.
tax burden, if you will, towards a $1 million budget. So really, we're not asking the town to pay out all of that money. We're saying we expect that through our work, through our revenue generation, through this enterprise fund accounting system, we're gonna bring in somewhere around $700,000 is our expectation.
So you're expecting.
We're gonna bring
our
that in.
net- Our net, the town's net payment to the enterprise fund will be $100,000.
$102,778.
That is what the assessment is, correct?
It's
That's
on the
Is
warrant.
there a world in which,
Yeah, that's capital end.
which that goes down because you're
So
bringing in enterprise
year
money?
over year, a couple of things will happen as we go forward, and that's part of where this intermunicipal agreement starts to really benefit us all. The advisory board from all 4 towns looks at what we're doing, gets regular reports on all of our operations, both cost and revenue, so income and expense. They watch that along with me and help to make recommendations for the benefit of the towns. So we'll be able to watch equipment and hopefully avoid a short capital expense. We'll know that the 10-year model that we've built out as part of this process for capital is on track, or we need to adjust it, or maybe we're ahead, or we're successful on grants for certain items, and maybe that helps to offset it, or revenue generation goes up. I don't know if the legislators are ever going to improve reimbursements, but it could happen. The cost of doing business goes down slightly. There are variants. I agree, but you asked the question, so I'm going to tell you the world in which that lives. Call your representatives and advocate. But year after year after year, it adjusts based on total town population and utilization. So if all of a sudden one town uses a lot more than another town,
Yeah.
that will adjust where they fall in this model. If we are able to raise more money and the advisory board looks at all of this and we present it through the FinCom and through you as the select board, because of the control that we retain for all of this as the towns and as the town leaderships, we're able to look at that and say, yes, we think we had a really good year. We should use more of that retained earning to offset the assessments. This year, we're proposing to use a significant amount of retained earnings to offset the burden to the towns for the assessments this year. So we have the ability to do those things. It's just gonna be year over year, what is fiscally
Okay.
responsible to maintain
What's the
the
mix?
funds towards our capital needs and
Right.
operating, because we want to make sure we have something. I won't say it won't happen, but my hope is that we don't have to have a conversation of, hey, we're short. How do we raise this money and have to go to
Right.
the 4 towns and ask for additional funds?
I have a quick fine-grained question because we had the hiring on there. Has everybody in EMS now, do they all have their physicals taken care of? When you get hired, you're supposed to do a physical. Do you, a physical exam when they
Yes.
get hired? Is everybody up to date on that? Is that like a checkoff thing
To
that
my
happens
knowledge,
right away?
yes.
We do pre-employment
Yeah.
physical.
Pre-employment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before they start collecting a paycheck, they've all had their
We
physicals?
send them off to, I forget the name of the place. to do the pre-
AEIO.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called something else now, but yeah.
Like highway
Thanks.
has to do that too.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to point out, it's labeled as E&R grant offset, 88,000, a little over 88,000, is the remainder of the grant that we had for this regionalization process. So that's been applied as well, that's on here. And Sarah, I think I found that,
The place that I was talking about?
well, I'm noticing with Irving, it's labeled as NEMS portion, and then in another spot, it's labeled as 50% of the population. So that one is population versus, did we identify what NEMS is?
Northfield EMS.
Oh, Northfield EMS.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you're looking at
Okay,
Exhibit
sorry.
B.
I think that the confusion might come, and I think there's a reasonable explanation, is way back in the beginning when it says Northfield EMS shall provide the joint emergency medical services within the borders of Gill, Irving, and Bernardston under this agreement. Irving is not broken out to say half of Irving,
Right.
but that's somewhat to give the authority to be in Irving. I don't think it's
Correct.
relevant at that point in time to
Yes.
say, but only half of Irving.
And-
No, I hear you. I just wanted to
Oh.
make sure, like,
And
Does
the
that
answer.
take care of what you had noticed?
I don't, I'll look and see. I don't remember what I
The
was.
answer to B's point, though, is the statement about geographic boundaries is a service zone issue for us to be able to provide the service as the designated provider. The sub-answer is in Exhibit B, where when we do the assessment model, because we don't physically count the number of people that live west of a line and east of a line, we just agreed to, or the task force all agreed that we were gonna divide their population in half. So that's the 50% for the population side of it. And that's how the assessment model filtered for Irving.
Okay. I'll just, if I find the area, I'll send it to you.
Please,
that way.
yep.
Anything else?
No, that was
Do we,
good.
do we need a motion here to?
Oh, just one other thing.
or do-
Based on our discussion tonight with the finances and how confusing it is, because I think this is true in general, and what the warrant article is tied to, Tori's suggestion at the building committee last week was to do a quote-unquote pictogram. So that's what we're gonna be working on to, kind of just have a picture of when you're authorizing the budget, you're not saying you're authorizing EMS, right? And the same thing with the ambulance, that doesn't mean that's what Northfield is paying for. And so we're gonna clarify that so that it's clear from which warrant articles apply to which part of the financial waterfall, if you will.
Yeah. And I do just kind of want to close and say thank you. I know this is hard and this is a lot of information moving, and this has been my sole focus, and you all are focused on everything. So it's a lot. But from the other towns and the speed at which their leadership has just said, yes, we trust the town of Northfield, not me, but the town collectively and the leadership for championing this and being willing to lead this necessary service. Thank you. It's really been a privilege. You've upheld your end with me when you hired me to say that you were going to support this, and I'm really proud to be able to be out in the other communities and represent you all in the town through this project. There are many other communities that are struggling right now. There's Southern Berkshire is going through a horrific need for a 2.5 prop override, possibly just to be able to fund their EMS service and their emergency services. And so the position and the work of the task force over the last many years, and your willingness to sit and take the time and listen to me drone on week after week after week for all of this
For all 5 months.
is really providing the communities what I believe to be an invaluable service. So thank you all for that.
Do you want a motion? We're gonna sign
Yeah,
this?
let's do a motion. Yeah, and thank you, Matt. I know you jumped into the deep end when you got hired, and you've really been stellar in terms of digging in.
You have to authorize me to sign it too.
Okay.
You want me to motion or?
Yeah, if you read it out, then I'll, we can do a so moved in a second.
Okay.
So that, 'cause you're
A
gonna
motion
send-
that as of the first day of April 2025,
April Fool's Day.
Town of Northfield enters into this intermunicipal agreement with Gill, Irving, and Bernardston pending their approval. And I authorize the select board chair to sign on behalf of the Town of Northfield.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Thank you.
so you sign it.
On to the town meeting, Matt.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
And thanks to your,
Get your pictographs ready.
You give me a call. Let's sit down and you can help me draw them on
we'll test it
napkins
out.
if
We'll
you
test-
would,
As soon as
please.
we get it, we'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. Good night.
Okay,
Holy
now we
cow.
have next up a board clerk position appointment.
Yay!
We have no interim select board meetings.
What's that?
You just skipped interim select board meetings, so I just wanted to make sure you.
Oh, interim select board meeting, there was none.
I think we're gonna have one Thursday, right?
Yeah, well, it'll be posted,
You're posted, it's posted already as a joint meeting
a
with
joint meeting. If
Yes.
we get 3 people there,
your covered.
we motion to, call to order and then we adjourn at the end.
Yeah,
But if we don't have 3 people,
I'm gonna be there.
I'll try to be there. I've got
I'll
a
probably
big
gonna be
assignment
there.
due.
Oh,
If I can crunch my brain hard
it's
enough.
March, yeah.
okay. Board clerk's position appointment. Andrea, do you want to, I don't have any paperwork on that.
I've got the paperwork right here.
Oh,
So all I just wanted
I
to say
just stole
was,
it from her.
due to circumstances, Lindy has asked if she could come back to do minutes for the boards and committees that she's been doing minutes for. That's Finance Committee, Planning Board, Emergency Services Building Committee, Emergency Services Task Force, and the CPC, Community Preservation Committee.
I'll be glad of that.
All of them
I
are
will be-
just
I've been doing
already, I
minutes
told
for 2 of
her, she shrieked, she was so happy.
I did
Um,
my happy
Minutes are
dance.
so hard.
And she's
Yeah.
very good, and she's gotten a lot of compliments from these boards and committees on her minutes, so she really knows it. Because we tried to advertise the position, and we really didn't receive any qualified
Twice.
candidates. Yes, it's been going for a long time, and minutes are a specialty, let's just put it that way. We are moving to try and address this with some more remote recordings of minutes. We had the little recorder we may do it, setting up a Zoom account and just having a laptop pop up, just so that she doesn't have to come to every meeting, which really makes it attractive
Right.
for her. She does live in Vermont, but in general,
People need to say
she-
who's talking.
right, yeah, she'll learn. She's learned. She knows who many of the players are already because she did it for
Yeah.
a long time. But she will still be coming in 1 or 2 days a week, depending on at work, to do the filing and consult and do other things. So, so I'm
That's it.
asking that since she was a former employee, that the board vote to reinstate her in her same position, the same step
So
in
I make a
grade.
motion to do that.
At the, and I'm going to
Go ahead and
hop
read it.
onto that, with the rate of pay at $21.35 an hour, grade 5, step 3.
effective immediately.
Effective immediately, if not sooner.
I'll
Good.
second that.
She's coming in at 11 tomorrow, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 An enthusiastic aye, back to
Very
Wendy.
relieved, aye.
Yeah.
Do we have anything on the community planning coordinator classification?
We do.
Yeah,
So, B or David, do you want to take it away? You both participated in the process, so.
it was new. What did you think, David? I love the
Of the
discussion.
process?
Yeah,
I thought tonight's conversation was good, because last time we didn't have one. We all agreed.
Yeah,
That's the easy part, but it doesn't always work that way.
right. There's all that, so where am I?
So we did have Dan as the finance committee rep, B, David, and myself as sort of the mini classification committee, taking the book, taking the factors, going through the process, and everybody independently does the rating and then comes together and looks at it. I have to say, this is the most disparate one I had ever had. All four people had 4 different rankings. Now, that isn't to say that the scores were that far apart. It's just some people were at the high end of one or the low end of another, and it ended up with a very interesting. So we did meet as a group to try and discuss why people felt differently, where we agreed, where we didn't agree, and why people had different interpretations, and that's a very helpful part of the process. We also looked at the average. We put all our scores together and averaged it. Did it come to a place that we all agreed made sense for the average? And then discussed that. Was that the job, just the classification step grade that we would want to be at, just because it came out as an average? So,
So long story short, we netted out at.
Too late.
That ship sailed.
Sorry about that. It was an exciting process, and we all worked through it. And we netted out at an average score of 327, which puts it at a grade 8, which would be a step 1.
well, grade 8, we
Presumably.
would presumably hire it as step 1, yes.
Right, presumably.
And what's that number amount?
Grade 8, step 1 is $26.44 an hour.
And if that's a full-time position, what's the yearly wage for that?
I can tell you that because I brought it. Grade 8, step 1 is $55,211.
Okay, do you have a motion to, any discussion on that before we?
I move that we approve the community planning coordinator classification at grade 8.
Okay, second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. East Northfield Water Company, Grandin Water
Oh, let's hear
District
about
update.
that.
I'm going to make it a quick one because I think after this, we're working in several places and they're going to want to come to you if they get to the point. So I met with a representative from the East Northfield Water Company and the Grandin Water District Commissioner yesterday. The transfer has really been stymied because the cost of the DEP requirement for filtration. We all know that. They wanted this big expensive plant. Grandin doesn't want to take that burden on without figuring out how to pay for it, which nobody knows how to pay for.
And they have to
So,
buy them out too, don't that?
no, they're going to give them everything.
Okay.
They're happy to.
Okay.
Well, it's a small nonprofit company and they really just
Is
not
there
in the
a-
business.
But don't they have to remediate? Isn't it gonna cost, once they pick up the ball, it's gonna cost money to fix things
Well,
from
the
their standing
filtration,
point?
but no, the plant, everything there is in pretty good shape. East Northfield Water Company, now, like all the small enterprise funds, then they just replaced a big
Districts?
section of,
You said enterprise fund.
like we have our enterprise funds, or the Northfield Water District, aging infrastructure, but
Right.
they've kept up on it. They just replaced a main on Pearson, so they're not, you know, they're not saying we're handing you this
They
old
haven't
ball of wax.
abandoned-
That was in the fall though,
No.
right? That wasn't right now,
They just did that, yes,
in the fall.
yes, which was a problematic piece, and they have raised enough money, they've straightened out their books quite a bit, to now actually making enough money to actually be doing some capital work, which is very, really
encouraging.
exciting, because if you take this on, you wanted to have an enterprise, you want to have an enterprise, don't do the fun part, that actually can support itself.
Right.
So that was a big piece. So, they've been working with an engineer who may have a much less expensive solution and is tied into DEP, and so they're working to make sure that they have an agreed upon and accepted and approved DEP piece. That piece may be a very affordable piece, and they can give more specifics when they come to visit. So they're going to be getting back to me, and they want to meet with the select board to update as soon as they have all those final estimates, because that's not something they can necessarily fund as a private company. But as a public entity, we have a whole host of other financial options if they become the Grandin Water District to be able to assist them with, to fund that hopefully much less expensive situation that DEP would have said, yes, we give our blessing. So
Wow.
I don't know enough to say much
Yay.
more, and
Are they coming next meeting, Chair?
I don't think they'll know by next meeting, plus you have a bunch of things, but we'll wait to hear from them.
Okay.
It's a question of whether they get back in touch with us.
That's a good update.
Okay.
Highland Ave?
Oh, Chair, I had something on that would fall under the 48-hour rule. Somebody just brought something to me.
Haven't gotten there, have you?
May I?
Well, what is it? And we'll see if we discuss it.
The, one of the planning board members has never gotten their stipend because the town lost the paperwork. And then they said, well, we're just not gonna be able to pay it. And so that person came to me and said, that's not fair. And it just came to me.
Well, I think it should go to the treasurer who pays.
It's already been talked, she brought it to me because it's already been talked about, so.
Well, it's never been discussed with me. I have no idea who this person is.
Okay.
So I'm happy to rectify a situation of lost paperwork. That seems an easy
Well,
fix.
it was lost paperwork and then it didn't get paid. And then they said, oh, well,
Well, if it's a
now.
previous fiscal year, it might be a different story, but
that's
I
it.
don't know the
It's
specifics.
Yes, it's last year.
So,
So can that, so we can add that somewhere, even if it's last year though, right? Because that's money that we owe and we didn't pay out.
We'll have to have a different discussion.
I think
on
we're
that.
stretching the 48-hour
Yeah.
thing, so
That's a
can
discussion
you
that
take
has
an
to be had.
action item and just?
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but I
Okay.
will.
Or you
I'll
can
talk to you
pass,
afterward.
yeah, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Highland Ave Mass Works,
I did
Revision?
I did get that, Zach
you
and
sent
I,
that out to us.
Zach and I worked
Yep.
on that. He sent me
Saw
something.
that.
We met today with a gentleman from MassWorks. We revised that scope and sent it back in. So I did send it as soon as we had it, which was really noon or 1 o'clock today. So I can understand if everybody haven't had the time to review it, but they did want to send it back so that you could see what that looked like. It did include the budget breakdown and how that's going to work out. But he couldn't give his blessing. He has to bump it up to a supervisor, but we did speak with him prior to finalizing the scope, and I reworked a lot of it to make it an expansive project, not a swapping project. And that seemed to appease them
That
a
makes
little
more
bit better.
sense.
They don't like the idea of saying, we give you a grant for this, now you want to sub this in. I said, no. We're still going to do this. We just want to expand the scope of the project. And he seemed to like that a little bit better. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, but
Prevent
I
any disasters that involve the water, so.
just wanted to make sure you all had a chance to look at that.
All righty, so that's just,
So we
everybody
don't need
knows they
to
have that.
approve or sign that, that's
sent
it
just
out.
informational.
It's got to go up
Okay,
the chain
great.
for approval, and we'll wait to hear if we hear
It
any
looked good to me.
comments. One way or the other, we're going to do the culvert. If they say no, we're still going to do the culvert. But our hope is to do both.
All right, now we're on
Moving
to
forward.
review of the draft annual town meeting warrant.
I noticed that Skip is only 7 years old, so we might want to change that.
So is there just a typo? We haven't done, this is just the first draft,
Years
so
old, that
anything
part.
you catch, age, 77. Must be 67? 67,
Mine just says 7.
yeah.
And I was wondering, so these
77.
don't have numbers on them, but they will, right? 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16 don't have
We never do the warrant
Numbers.
doesn't include the numbers, the motion warrant will.
the motion.
The warrant goes out with it always has, goes out with like this, and then the motion warrant and the stuff
Will
that
be
we do
available to
prior.
people when?
Hopefully, it's usually a few weeks.
But the actual thing with the numbers will be available for them for 2 weeks, isn't?
Well, 2 weeks when we post, so we gotta get this out. And then we will work on the handout for the material, and I will have the motion warrant ready by then. And then all the numbers will be in for the motion warrant. But this is generally how we do it, and we do it this way because if at the last minute anything changes and you've printed it in the warrant,
Right, makes sense. I just wanted to make sure what the time was that the citizens are gonna have the
They
numbers.
usually have at least a week.
I'll work on getting
We'll
that.
be doing the finished one, we'll be voting on recommendations the next meeting.
Correct, so this is just the first draft of the full warrant. If you approve it in form, I send it to the attorney for legal review, because there can be tweaks to some, especially some of the articles in the back, there's a little bit of legal stuff going on.
Yes.
So I make sure that the lawyer returns it, he'll make some tweaks, he always does. And then you will have to sign it and post it at your next meeting on the 15th, or you're gonna have to have a special meeting by the 21st, as the warrant will contain the election warrant, which has to be posted 2 weeks ahead of time.
Right.
So the 15th, hopefully we have everything back. And any questions you might have on this are addressed. Yes?
21st is a holiday.
Right, so that's the problem we run into, so.
I think we're closing in on the next
Yeah,
meeting.
so,
Okay.
but I wanted everyone to see it, have any questions now before it goes to the lawyer. I think this is every article that has been presented, brought forward, both from Finance Committee and before the Select Board, from the departments, from whomever. The Finance Committee's having their planning review session on Tuesday, April 22nd. I think theoretically, if you couldn't sign it on the 15th, you could probably have a special meeting 15 minutes before that and sign it then, because I think the election is the one that's on the Tuesday, and that's the one that's got to have the 2 weeks, so. Problem is timing. It's gotta be posted before the election. No, you'd have to do it the week before. You'd have to do it the Friday before. Anyway, so we do have that town meeting review session on Tuesday, the 22nd. We've already reserved the elementary school cafeteria for 6 o'clock. So,
6 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
the review session was always at 6 last time. The town meeting is at 7.
Oh, okay.
So, once this gets approved and that you guys are okay with it, then I work on the flyer that goes out that has both town meeting information and the review session.
Let me ask you, you're talking about a review session immediately before the meeting
No,
or
it's
at a
a
different
week.
time? Okay, that's, I
A
just
week,
was,
it's 2 weeks before town meeting?
Yeah.
It's the 22nd of April.
Great.
Town meeting's May 1st.
you're just throwing out all these dates.
Yeah, and we'll get them posted. I just wanted you guys
Okay.
to get a sense of them, but we will announce, yes, the
Our meeting
22nd,
is what, May 5th?
May 5th, my bad.
Yeah.
I'm going April 1st, May 1st.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's a couple of weeks prior would be we don't like to do it too early because people
That's
don't
okay.
have, but, we want them to have the material, we'll get the warrant out.
So the
Or too
task,
late, then it's too close to ask
right,
questions.
so the task at hand is that we give a,
Is there anything in here that you have questions
Blessing.
on or
Yes.
feedback on now so that I can make sure it goes in?
Sarah.
20 and 21, would you explain to me what those are?
Oh, I was just gonna ask about.
Oh, and I did want to point out before we go, if you look at the EMS budget, which is Article 7, you will see the budget, wages, salaries, expenses, and then it be raised as follows. Departmental receipts is 1,032,000, town tax levy 102,77 for that total. So there's where you're going to see the distinction between the enterprise fund is the department receipts, and the 102 is the town tax levy.
Okay,
So it breaks it out that way, so you can see the two pieces,
got
the
it.
towns being asked to
But it
approve.
doesn't break out in that 102, it doesn't break out the operating versus capital.
It never does. I mean, you.
Right, but I think that's why when
going
people
into the
go from
enterprise fund.
25 to almost 103, that people's,
That's something
Yeah.
that can be discussed informationally.
yeah, I'm just gonna keep
Okay,
repeating that
so we'll go
until we
back.
get to the town.
So you said Article 20?
20 and 21, and
Yeah.
also
Okay.
32. Those are the three that I have questions.
So 20 is the HERO Act and 21 is the HERO Act. There's two pieces to the HERO Act.
Okay.
So the first one is, it increases, and it hasn't been determined, this has to be done on town meeting floor. This article increases, Article 20, the amount of the tax exemption granted to veterans on their domiciles annually, automatically by a cost of living adjustment COLA. So if you accept this, DOR will determine a COLA based on the consumer price index, and that tax exemption we already grant to veterans on their domiciles. There's already an exemption in there.
Really? Because I don't think I'm getting it.
You have to apply for it at the assessor's office.
Okay, veterans, you get to apply for a tax exemption.
Oh,
I
many of
totally
them
didn't
do.
know.
Yeah.
So does
that
it
would
say
now-
veterans on there anyway? Because I didn't see that. It just seemed annual increase of the amount exemption granted under U.S. laws. It doesn't say granted to whom, does it? Because that's
It's
what
the
I was
language that
reading.
that's the language that we're given.
That's why I was asking, because I
Yeah.
didn't know who it was applying to.
Yeah, and the notes in the motion warrant will say that specifically. It increases the amount of tax exemption granted to veterans on their domiciles under clause 22 A, B, C,
Okay.
E, and F.
And that'll be added into this, or that'll just be on the other ones?
Well, it'll be on the notes. It'll be when you do the motion warrant, I include all the notes.
Okay.
So it'll say.
And we'll have to cover it at the information session, obviously, right?
And then the second one is.
And I can talk to the lawyer if we add,
Can you add like a title or something?
no, I'll,
Because it just says, hey, we're
Yeah.
going to grant this exception, but it doesn't say who to or what.
right, and it would be discussed, but I can add, see if we can add 2 veterans on their domicile under general laws vote. So we'll see.
And that's 20 and 21 are both the
That's
same
20.
thing?
Nope,
Oh, okay.
21 is actually different. This, if the authorizes an annual increase to the amount of the veterans exemption, and I'll talk about adding under Mass General Law, and the percentage has to be inserted, which is something, I don't know what language he wants to put in there or whether you want to make a recommendation, because the article provides an exemption up to a certain percentage, the maximum being 100%. So in other words, if Mass General Law authorizes an annual increase, so right now there's a statutory way that you figure it out, and there's an annual increase, that can be doubled under Mass General Law. But there's a bulletin, I can send you the information to read on it, and it's called the HEROES Act, and this will allow an annual increase in the amount of the exemption granted under the previous section, 100%, 50%, 70% of the personal exemption, subject to the conditions, and I don't want to get into all that language,
Right.
for the applicable exemptions granted July 1. So if there's an applicable exemption granted for veterans under a certain number, if you accept this, you can put, as a local community, you can say, we'd actually like to do another 50%, or we'd like to double that exemption. And I'll ask the assessor to speak to it. She can speak to it and explain, because they already do this veterans exemption.
Right.
There is a veterans exemption process now, there's paperwork, you get this exemption. This clause, if the town accepts it, would increase it by some percentage that the town decides. And then the COLA is the automatic COLA on top of it, otherwise you get what you've accepted and it never
Yeah.
changes.
I think if you can just ask him, because it is referred to under
Yep,
the
I read it.
MGL. But this.
It just was because I
It
had
is
no
confusing,
clue.
but the MGL has so many different sections.
Yes,
And this
and
is
we
just
don't.
one little section,
So,
so.
yeah.
Yeah. if
And
you
then
can-
Article 32, would you explain what
Article
are
32.
abandoned funds?
This is when the town ultimately owns a property, right? The town will take a property, we've got 20 of them on the books. The town can dispose of that property if given the select board permission. It can be by auction, you can put select board could decide to put it in conservation. However, if you dispose of it by auction, which is the most common way to dispose of a piece of land that the town has taken because they've been through many, many years of trying to reach out to anybody, and you dispose of it, say the property is, tax value was assessed at this 20 years on, it's $1,000 now with all the interest and all that, it's $1,000. Say it sells for $1,200 at auction. There's $200 there. What happens to that $200?
I
Well,
thought there was guidance that said we can't keep that.
There used to be, you could keep it. Went to the Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court, this woman sued, she was actually living in her home, so it's a very different situation. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
generally take people's homes they're living in and sell them, but, and she argued that she should have gotten everything they got for the sale of her property, not just what was owed to them. So if they sold her house for $50,000, but she only owed 25, she said, I should get the full 50. And so the Supreme Court said, that's it, towns and cities can't keep that money anymore. Well, unless they have a mechanism under state law. So none
This
of
is
us,
the
this is the
This is the
mechanism
mechanism.
that the state has adopted for towns, cities and towns to keep that. And there's a process. Even if that happens, the town has to put it in an account. The town has to make another attempt at advertising it. It has to wait a year. It doesn't just quit go in the checkbook. There's a process. The town still has to make an extra effort. Otherwise, if you don't accept this section, you're going to actually turn it over to the state. Unclaimed property funds for the Office of the State Treasurer.
Okay.
And they'll set off.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
So
It's not a problem that comes very often for us, but
Well,
it's worth having the.
it would come more often if we could actually dispose of some of the properties that we have, which I'd love to get back on the tax roll, which
Yeah, we
is
got a long
the
list.
next article? Yes,
30.
Article 33.
30 and 33, you might want to map.
Yeah, we have maps, I have them.
What was the
We
issue
had it at the
last
last
time?
time.
What was the main consensus why it was voted down?
Somebody didn't want it to be, us to have control of it, so they tabled it. They made a
yeah.
motion and it,
And there's no
Somebody
way for the
wanted to
town
buy
to
it,
they
right?
voted, well, they thought they wanted to buy it, but.
They're the one on Swamp,
Well, that was one
They didn't want us
parcel.
to have
Yeah, we had a
control of any
few.
of them.
You had the
If I
same
remember
list
right.
here except
What was the
Swamp is-
debate?
I can answer that because I had to answer this at the info session last year. When it was voted to not give us authorization, we basically can't put anything in front of people unless it was by a particular, we would have to take them one by one, right? And so the feedback that we got at the info session for the Fall Town meeting on Swamp Road was, why don't you put all of them up for auction? And it's like, we're in a catch-22. The way that it ended up with that vote is we don't have the authorization, so we need to keep going back to ask for authorization to dispose of a particular property, right?
One by one.
One by one.
Well,
When,
I think originally when these get taken for various means,
Right.
they go to the care and control and custody of the tax collector. In order for the town to then take them out from the tax collector,
Right.
town has to authorize it to the select board, because the select board's the custodian of
Right.
town property. Only they can buy and sell town property.
But we
Minor
weren't-
exception
we
with
weren't
land
So, but
authorized.
look, the Parker Ave ones, aren't those, they're the old dump?
Correct.
And
So-
the Gill Center Road one, that's the little corner piece, right, where there's a cemetery and there's like a little piece that nothing can be built on.
right.
The
But
Cross
in order
Road
for the
is also
select
that.
board to take those Parker Ave properties potentially, because we don't necessarily want to advertise that it's an older, and put them, say, for
We don't want-
example, in conservation restriction and preserve them and keep them, the select board has to
I hear
have the
you.
authority to do
But
that.
somebody asked what the reason was for it, and I know one of the reasons was because people were concerned that the solar companies that were coming in buying everything were using those lands as a conduit to make something hooked up or something like that.
There's
That
been
was
no
the
approach
concern
to the
that I
town.
heard.
I can attest, there's been no approach to the town by any solar company for town-owned land or any of these parcels. That was
The ones that, I
a
think
rumor at best.
from a
Well, but you asked why, and that's what I heard.
Yeah, but the other thing was for those that actually have any value, so the CR ones are, they are what they are. But for the ones that actually have value that we could sell and put money into the town coffers, if we're going to end up doing it by auction, for example,
Who's gonna buy those little pieces?
Oh, people, and the abutters do. They
Right.
want to add them to their land.
right, but in order to get an auctioneer to do something and then essentially give you the money, they like to take them as packages.
They won't sell one piece.
They won't just do one property, they want to do multiple properties because one will be probably much more valuable than another.
Right.
And that's how they make
Well,
their
you
money.
also get a better turnout. If the town
Right.
puts out 8 properties, you get more interest, more people
Right.
come, more people bid, you're going to get a better response, a better return. And the town can shave off parcels the town wants to keep for any reason, or the select board can put them in conservation restriction. You can move through this process once you have them in your care, control, and custody to determine each and every parcel. So then you've made that determination, you decide there's a block of them you want to dispose of, get the money for them, and put them back on the tax roll. Some of these haven't paid taxes in 20, 30, 40 years.
Conservation doesn't pay taxes, does it?
Well, that one wouldn't, but there's
ones
no
that are
reason
valuable.
why some of these shouldn't be back on
I
the tax
thought Green
roll.
Meadow Road was the one that we just, that the forestry was interested in.
Which one?
Forestry?
Great Meadow, you said?
Yeah.
No, you're talking about Swamp for DCR?
Swamp Meadow Road?
Swamp Road, that's
Swamp.
not on
Swamp.
here.
Okay, I just
That's not
got
on here.
Great
Yeah.
Meadow and Swamp mixed up in my head.
That's not on this list,
Okay.
because you've already
The concern was that
You already got care, control, and custody of that one.
The other concern was that we were somehow going to dispose of them and people wouldn't know about it, but we actually have to take a public vote on
Yeah.
anything we do in terms of selling. or-
It has to go to the town, or we have to
Us.
vote?
We do, once they give us control, we have to have
Right.
a vote on a public meeting here.
For what you want to do with them.
Like
we
at an
wanna do it.
agenda.
And we have to put it on the agenda and people would,
And the only way for you to dispose of them is either sealed bid or auction. You can't do it privately. It's not legal.
Yeah,
Okay, what do we have to motion to accept the
Send to
draft?
the,
Any other questions?
I'd like, if possible, I'd like you to add the veteran wording.
Yeah, no, I've already made a note.
I motion
That's
that
fine.
we accept the draft of 3/26/2025 of the warrant for the town meeting to send to the lawyer.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I will,
Yay.
the next time you see this, it will be for you to take votes on for each individually, whether you
Recommendations.
support, whether you
Yep.
support it or not, and
Yep.
then it should be in final form with proper language.
Okay.
Okay, now, do we have any citizens' concerns? No? Okay.
Just visiting citizens.
There's a couple here, so I figured I'd at least ask. Not that you guys are shy.
Oh, good God, no.
All right.
I move that we appoint Marcus Grayley as an election officer, term expiring August 15th, 2025.
Second.
I have a question. Is he coming on because Dan Campbell has usually worked elections and he is not allowed to if he's running? Is that right?
No, they have election officers to assist them with the elections.
Right.
I believe
And doesn't
someone
he do that?
resigned. I think
Oh,
somebody
somebody
resigned
resigned.
last year.
Okay.
To answer that, we get citizens' interest all the time for election officers.
And when she has
Oh,
an
okay.
opening, she'll,
Cool.
And this guy was an election officer in Somerville, so he wants
Yep.
to continue the tradition here, which is great.
Somerville.
So thanks to Marcus.
All right. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Announcements, I got. Franklin County Solid Waste District Hold the Foam events. Saturdays, April 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th, 9 to noon. At 4 locations, open to residents of these towns. Leverett Transfer Station, Montague Transfer Station, Northfield Transfer Station, and Warwick Transfer Station. And,
That's a
Nice.
lot of Saturdays. That's a lot of commitment that they're putting into helping like that.
yeah,
And it all started with one person's idea.
also, I'd just like to announce the warrant information session. Don't forget about that on the 22nd at NES at 6 o'clock at the elementary school. And
at NES, okay.
And the three-town joint FinCom Finance Committee Select Board meeting is at 6 o'clock in the Bernardston Senior Center. That is a public meeting. It is posted for you all.
That's this Thursday, 3rd.
That is this Thursday. That's the meeting you were talking about earlier, which the school said, that district said they were also attending. But it is open to the public if anybody is interested in hearing the discussion about the regional agreement. That will be the topic for that meeting.
Okay,
Recognition for service?
any recognitions?
Yeah, can we just shout out to the Panthers, the Pioneer Panthers, for their, you and I were, because last time we talked about condolences, and I just wanted to make sure that we recognized the high school basketball team and how well they did.
Right.
So,
They did really great.
Okay.
Didn't they win state?
Yes.
yeah, they did.
Undefeated.
Undefeated.
And they crushed
Undefeated.
it. They crushed it, yeah.
That's awesome.
They
Okay,
crushed
now-
every game pretty
Congratulations.
much, yeah.
That's pretty much it. So we have an executive session.
We adjourn to not return.
Yes, motion that we go into executive session to adjourn from here, not to return.
Good night, Bernie.
And, yeah. Do I
Second.
hear a second?
Third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
BS.
Bernie, yes?
Sarah, yes.
David, yes.
Heath, yes.
Okay,